Greetings, dear viewers. It is I, Drehan, and welcome back to another Dungeons & Dragons character conversion. Today, we'll be talking about police officers, the enforcers of the law who protect us every single day. Love them or hate them, they are here for a good reason. Without them, where would we be? Probably dead in our houses. Probably dead on the streets. Who knows? Today, I wanted to create 2 character builds based off of these officers. Our first officer is going to be the everyday police officer, whether it be the traffic officer or one of the main enforcers that help investigators. Officer number 2 are going to be the more heavy-duty officers, like SWAT officer, the SWAT unit. The people in SWAT, the people that are in the FBI, those guys. They are going to be officer number 2. While Officer 1 is going to be representing, well, the police department. So let's go ahead and get right into it with Officer 1 and Officer 2's stats. And as always, we will be using the point-buy system. And as you see here, we have strength for Officer 1 being a modest 12. That's going to be a +1 modifier. Now, dexterity and constitution are going to also be a modest +1 modifier at 13. And intelligence is just going to be a flat +0 at a 10. There are some officers that are very intelligent, so you can edit this however you want. But for our generic officer, we're going to have a generic intelligence score, as well as charisma. Charisma is just going to have a +1 modifier. They're not going to be that charismatic. They're still charismatic, don't get me wrong. However, there are some that don't think so, which is why I have it at a modest 12. But wisdom is going to be the highest score at a 14. And you'll see why here in a minute. Officer 2 is going to have his second highest stat be strength instead of constitution. 13 on both strength and dexterity. We're going to have a hardy attack-based build, but we also want a hardy dexterity. We want to be able to keep our officer alive. That way he can shrug off those arrows or bullets. Which is why both of our officers will have a 13 dexterity. Constitution's going to be a 12, while we're going to have a steady, a sturdy defense. Our health is limited, so we're going to go ahead and keep that at a 12. It's going to be the same modifier as our Constitution for Officer number 1, but it's just a smidge higher. Intelligence is going to be a 12. When you're part of the FBI or SWAT unit, you're going to have a little bit more intelligence than your average officer. Wisdom's only going to be a 10. We're just trading that off. And charisma is going to be a 14. It's going to be our highest stat. And you'll see why here in a minute. But I wanted to have it at a 14 because they're a little bit more, I guess you can say, intimidating. Since intimidation is one of our charisma scores. Alright, let's go ahead and go on to our race. Now, your Dungeons & Dragons officer can be whatever race you want. But for this build, we're just going to go ahead and do the human variant race. Ability score increase is going to be to dexterity, and depending on which officer it is, you will be adding +1 to wisdom or charisma. Officer 1 will get the wisdom, while Officer 2 gets the charisma. For skills, we will go ahead and grab persuasion. And for our feat, we will go ahead and grab the sharpshooter feat, because our officers are going to be good with a gun or with a crossbow, anything involving a ranged weapon. With our ability score improvements, we now have a 14 in dexterity, while our wisdom for Officer 1 is a 15 and charisma as a 15 for Officer 2. Moving on to our background, we will be doing Officer 1 with the City Watch. He will get Athletics and Insight as his skills. Languages will be Orcish and Elvish. And feature is going to be Watcher's Eye. This fits well within the boundaries of an officer, especially from your standard police department. Officer 2 is going to be the typical soldier, because most of the FBI or SWAT units you hear about are ex-military. So we're going to go ahead and do soldier. And we'll just go ahead and choose officer for the speciality. And you also get the military rank feature. Skills is going to be athletics and intimidation. Like I said, the FBI and the SWAT units are a little bit more intimidating, what with their heavy gear and slightly bigger weapons. Tools, you're going to get bone dice and vehicles, or a deck of cards, whichever one you choose. I just realized that I messed up at the last part. Oh well. Now for our class levels. Officer 1 is going to be a cleric, and we are going to be using the Unearthed Arcana Modern Magic City Domain. Now, if your Dungeon Master does not use Unearthed Arcana, that is fine. Just go ahead and pull out the Order Domain. That would work just as well. Now, for our City Domain Cleric, we get a nice 1d8 for our hit die, and our hit points is going to be 1d8 plus our Constitution modifier. Slightly different from what I was looking at earlier. Oh well. Hit points at higher level, 1d8 plus con modifier per cleric level. Proficiencies is going to be light armor, medium armor, and shields. We also have simple weapons. Our saving throws are going to be wisdom and charisma. Now our skills are going to be history and medicine. You gotta be able to act fast while on the field. If you have a civilian that is injured, you gotta be able to heal them as fast as possible, whether you have spells or not. You also get spell casting with your cleric, and your modifiers are going to be wisdom. Your domain spells are going to be comprehend languages and remote access. And you get a bonus cantrip of on and off, which will basically magically turn off any electrical device. We also get the feature Heart of the City, which will be very useful. For our second officer, we are choosing the Paladin. His hit dice is going to be a 1d10. And his hit points is going to be 1d10 plus Constitution modifier. Hit points at higher level, another 1d10 plus Constitution modifier per Paladin level. Officer 2's proficiencies are going to be all armor and shields. Weapons is going to be simple weapons, martial weapons. Saving throws is wisdom and charisma. Skills, medicine, and religion. The features we get are going to be divine sense and lay on hands. It's going to be very useful for out in the field when trying to find those evildoers, like maybe a terrorist or something. That would definitely trigger divine sense. Going up to level 2, we still have a second level cleric city domain for officer number 1. He has channel divinity of turn undead and spirits of the city. Officer 2 is still a paladin. We have the fighting style of close quarters shooter. So any long range weaponry will not impose disadvantage on you if you are below the specific range. You also get your divine smite, and you have spell casting now, which is going to be a charisma modifier. Leveling up to level 3, we do not have anything special for our cleric, unfortunately, but our paladin now has divine health, and we also get sacred oath. Now, there was not really a good sounding oath that a paladin for an officer would take, but then I saw Oath of the Crown, and everything about the Oath of the Crown just spoke officer. This is a police officer. This is a law enforcer. If you read the description for the Oath of the Crown Paladin, you'll see why. The oath spells we get are going to be Command and Compelled Duel. And we also get Channel Divinity of Champion Challenge and Turn the Tide. Leveling up to level 4, we will have a feat, either Sentinel or Tavern Brawler. This will all depend on how you want to work with your officer. Some officers are really good at grappling, so you would want a Tavern Brawler for those grapples. Sentinel for any opportunity attacks that your enemy might impose on you. Since you're going to be hunting down criminal scum, you will want the Sentinel feat. Going up to level 5, we are going to add a new class to the first officer, which is going to be Fighter. We're going to give him a 1d10 hit die as well as 1d10 plus Constitution modifier for extra hit points. Proficiencies, we now get martial weapons. Fighting style, we are either going to do the close quarter shooter like with our paladin, or we're going to do unarmed fighting, whichever one you decide to do. If you go with the Sentinel feat from the last level, go ahead and choose close quarter shooter. If you went with the Tavern Brawler, go with unarmed fighting. That is the best one, in my opinion. We also get the Second Wind feature. For the officer number 2, we have level 5 on Paladin. We get an extra attack, and we get the Oath spells of Warding Bond and Zone of Truth. At level 6, our first officer now has a second level in Fighter. We get Action Surge. For Officer 2, we have the Aura of Protection for his Paladin level. Moving on to level 7, we are upgrading once more in Fighter for Officer number 1, giving him the martial archetype of either the Brute or the Sharpshooter. Again, this is all on what you decide to build your character with. Personally, if we are going with the unarmed fighting style, I would go with Brute. This is a more tame version of the Barbarian, while the Sharpshooter, once again, is going to help you with your ranged weaponry. This all depends on how you want to build your character. Level 7th Paladin for Officer 2 gets Divine Allegiance. Level 8, go ahead and pick the feat that you did not pick before, either Sentinel or Tavern Brawler. Moving on to the spells. For Officer number 1, we have Cleric spells. At first level, we will have the Cantrip Guidance and Light, as well as Resistance. First level, we have Remote Access, Command, and Shield of Faith. This all depends on what you want to do for your build. At 4th level, go ahead and grab Bane as a first level spell. And for your 2nd level, go ahead and grab Lesser Restoration and Summon Vehicle. For our 2nd officer, since he gets his spells at level 2, our spells are going to be Shield of Faith, Heroism, and Wrathful Smite. At 8th level, go ahead and also grab the second level spells of Aid, Find Steed, and Lesser Restoration. For our equipment, we have starting equipment for Officer 1, which is going to be the following. Now, thanks to his background, he gets a uniform in that style of his unit, and oh man, I can't pronounce that word. Indicative of your rank. You get a horn, which will help summon allies. Kind of like a walkie-talkie almost. You get a set of manacles or handcuffs. You get a pouch and 10 gold. For Officer 2, well, I was going to have him with some ranged weaponry, like a pistol or the bad news. But I think you also need to be able to have the ammunition as well. And unfortunately, it does not list that with your equipment. If you go by a different equipment style, go ahead and do that. But these are the starting equipment that you get with the class. And with your background, you have insignia of rank, a trophy from a fallen enemy, and this is where I messed up. I put deck of cards in here instead of the bone dice because I forgot what I did for proficiency. So this is just what you're proficient with, whatever game set you have. You also get a set of common clothes, a belt pouch, and 10 gold. Alright, and that's going to do for our officers. If you have a family member who is an officer, put down in the comments a thank you of sorts. Maybe you know an officer. Thank them in the comments below. If you are an officer, please share us some of your stories. I would love to hear stories of our hard-working officers. Until next time, this has been Drehan, and I am offline.